A fierce and torrential storm is bearing down on a remote, dilapidated cabin in the New Hampshire woods, mirroring the shattered life of its current occupant, Casey. A fiercely independent 35-year-old former third-grade teacher, Casey typically wears her brown hair pulled back into a practical ponytail, bracing against the cold in heavy winter gear and waterproof boots. She is a woman who prepares for the worst, carrying a deep-seated paranoia masked by strict boundaries. Her isolation is occasionally interrupted by her landlord, Rudy, a scrawny, lecherous man in his late 50s with droopy blue eyes, yellowing teeth, and a perpetual stench of cigarette smoke. Rudy lazily dismisses Casey's demands to fix her failing roof and a massive leaning tree outside her window. Her nearest neighbor, Lee Traynor, a tall, handsome man in his 30s with thick brown hair, a well-groomed beard, and a slightly crooked nose, also drops by to check on her. Despite his easy smile and clear protective concern, Casey coldly rebuffs his offer to wait out the storm at his safer cabin, preferring to remain alone in her fortress. As the storm's fury escalates, the power goes out, and Casey's paranoia spikes when she spots a ghostly face at her window, followed by a flickering light in her unstable tool shed. Armed with a Glock she keeps hidden in her dresser, she braves the torrential rain to investigate. Inside the shed, huddled beneath a thin blanket, she finds a painfully thin 12-year-old girl clutching a switchblade. The girl, Eleanor, who goes by Nell, has huge blue eyes, stringy shoulder-length red hair, and a splatter of freckles across her pale nose. Most horrifyingly, Nell is drenched in dark, wet blood. Casey gently coaxes the terrified and starving child inside the cabin, feeds her warm pasta and cookies, and works to earn her trust by making an infinity promise, a vow that she will never betray the girl under penalty of death. Casey's profound empathy for the abused child stems from a deeply guarded past. Years ago, Casey was a tiny, neglected middle schooler with red-brown hair and bright blue eyes, who went by the name Ella. Young Ella lived in absolute squalor with her mother, Desiree, a beautiful but deeply abusive chain smoker and severe hoarder. Desiree routinely burned Ella with lit cigarettes and locked her for hours inside a pitch-black, rotting hall closet as punishment. Ella's only solace during those dark years was her friendship with Anton Peterson, a skinny, troubled boy with spiky green hair and a perpetually bruised face, who endured severe abuse from his own alcoholic father. Despite his rough exterior, Anton fiercely protected Ella, and even taught her how to pick locks using a simple paperclip, a skill that would ultimately alter her destiny. Ella's childhood was marked by a desperate yearning for a better family. Upon finding a hidden birth certificate, she mistakenly believed that a wealthy local sociology professor, John Carter, was her biological father. When she gathered the courage to confront him, he coldly rejected her. Desiree cruelly laughed at Ella's mistake, revealing that her real father was an ex-convict named Johnny, who merely shared the same common name. The humiliation compounded when the professor's daughter, the popular and pristine Brittany Carter, publicly bullied Ella, shoving her to the ground and mocking her hoarder mother. Witnessing this, Anton's protective rage boiled over. He brutally beat Brittany with a heavy rock, shattering her face, and landing himself in juvenile detention, tearing him away from Ella. In the present day, while Nell rests in the cabin's bedroom, Casey covertly searches the girl's bloodstained backpack. She uncovers a soaked washcloth and a green notebook filled with horrific, violent sketches depicting a woman being sadistically tortured and dismembered. Believing the drawings are of herself, Casey panics and sneaks into the bedroom to retrieve her gun, only to find Nell wide awake and aiming the Glock directly at her. Just as the tension peaks, the massive, unstable tree outside finally gives way, crashing down and obliterating the tool shed where Nell had been hiding just hours prior. Realizing that Casey genuinely saved her life, Nell spares her but forces Casey to sit in a kitchen chair. At gunpoint, Nell demands Casey use duct tape to tightly bind her own wrists and ankles. Once Casey is immobilized, Nell flees the cabin into the storm with the gun and the switchblade, declaring she is out to serve long overdue justice. Trapped in the dark, Casey relies on her past once more. She uses a high acceleration trick her father taught her to snap the heavy duct tape. Freeing herself, she takes a closer look at Nell's notebook and makes a startling realization. The tortured woman in the drawings is not her. The sketches feature a square-jawed woman with dark eyes and a distinct beauty mark. Furthermore, the hand-drawn map in the notebook wasn't leading to Casey's cabin. It was directing Nell to Lee Traynor's house. Terrified that the traumatized girl is about to murder her neighbor, Casey braves the muddy, storm-ravaged woods and breaks into Lee's cabin through an open window. Casey arrives just in time to find Lee holding a baffled Lee at gunpoint. Nell tearfully accuses Lee of being her deadbeat father, screaming that he abandoned her to be tortured by her deeply abusive mother, Jolene Kettering. Nell revealed she found Lee's name and address hidden in her birth certificate folder. Keeping his hands raised, Lee gently and heartbreakingly explains that he is not her father. His older brother is. He gently reveals that his brother died 12 years ago in a car crash, unaware he had a daughter. Devastated by the loss of the father she came to find, Nell drops the gun and collapses in agonizing sobs. She confesses the dark truth of the blood on her clothes. Her mother, Jolene, was brutally stabbed by her drug-dealing Jax during a vicious domestic dispute. Covered in her mother's blood and terrified that Jax would frame her for the murder, Nell fled into the woods. With the phone line still down, Casey volunteers to drive to the police station to clear Nell's name. However, Casey has a much darker secret agenda. Having seen the unmistakable cigarette burns on Nell's arms, Casey recognizes the cycle of abuse. Her fierce protectiveness is exactly what cost her a teaching career. She was fired for taking a baseball bat to the car of an abusive parent when the system failed to protect a student. Casey drives across the border into Massachusetts and breaks into Jolene Kettering's rundown basement apartment. She finds Jolene bleeding on the kitchen floor, but very much alive. Posing as a paramedic, Casey questions the woman. Jolene continues to be a cruel, unrepentant monster who freely admits to burning her daughter, calling Nell a rotten brat who needed to be taught a harsh lesson. Casey's mind flashes back to her own youth. After Anton went to juvenile detention, Ella's mother locked her in the rotting closet one final time. Using the paperclip trick Anton taught her, Ella escaped. Pushed past her breaking point, she used a lighter Anton had given her to set the hoarded stacks of paper ablaze, intentionally leaving her mother to burn to death. Ella was subsequently sent to live with her biological father, the ex-convict John Carter. He provided a clean, loving home and taught her a dark philosophy that sometimes the only way to ensure true justice is to dispense it yourself. Ella eventually changed her name to Elizabeth Casey Carter, while Anton, years later, beat his own abusive father to death and went to prison for life. Channeling her father's harsh philosophy and her own childhood trauma, Casey pulls a pack of cigarettes from Jolene's purse. Methodically and mercilessly, she lights the cigarettes one by one, pressing the burning embers into Jolene's flesh, extracting the exact same agonizing pain Jolene inflicted on defenseless little Nell, ignoring the woman's screams. After ensuring Jolene suffers, she leaves her on the floor to bleed to death from her stab wounds, knowing Jax will inevitably take the fall for the murder. 6 months pass, bringing a fragile but beautiful peace. Casey kept her dark secret safe, and Jax was indeed arrested for Jolene's murder. Nell is now thriving under Lee's official guardianship. She has gained healthy weight, is healing from her trauma, and is being homeschooled by Casey, who delights in teaching the girl how to play poker. A quiet, undeniable romance is blooming between Casey and Lee, though Lee remains strangely secretive about his Friday night whereabouts, always returning home late and dodging questions. The truth of Lee's secret is revealed in a stunning convergence of past and present. One morning, Nell uses an old, faded photograph of her deceased father as a bookmark and shyly shows it to Casey. Casey stares at the photo, her throat closing with shock and grief. She instantly recognizes the young boy in the picture. It is Anton, her childhood best friend and savior. Stunned, she realizes that Lee Traynor is actually Anton's younger brother, Bradley, who changed his name to escape the shadow of their abusive father. The narrative shifts to Lee's perspective, revealing his Friday night secret. He drives 2 hours to visit Anton in a maximum security prison. Anton is not dead. He is serving a life sentence for murder. To spare his daughter the shame of having a convicted killer for a father, Anton begged his brother to tell Nell he had died in a car crash. Years ago, Anton had recognized Casey's name in a news story about the baseball bat incident and asked Bradley to move into the neighboring cabin to quietly watch over her. Bradley has fallen deeply, irrecoverably in love with Casey, but out of absolute loyalty and reverence for his brother, he refuses to kiss her until he asks for Anton's blessing, proving that above all else, family comes first.